Welcome into the week 3 edition of Workshop Wednesdays. I'm your host, Ben Hostler. I am joined by Sam Sherman. This once again will not be posted till Thursday, so we are once again coming to you from the future. As always, we need to shout out our sponsor, OwnersBox Fantasy. If you guys haven't checked out OwnersBox yet, not sure what you're waiting for, Travis has made a couple videos on the channel about how he's been able to win quite a bit of money playing their Lightning Lineups format. And then we obviously have core plays and content all over the website for their regular DFS slates, which are super flex based, which is really fun. You can sign up at ownersbox.online. Use promo code KARMA, gets you a $500 deposit match and a free entry to play Lightning lineups and a free entry into their GPP for the week. The big one this week, $10 to enter, $50,000 prize pool, $20,000 to first place. I will have an article up for that specific tournament on it comes out on Friday. So be sure to head over there, OwnersBox Fantasy, check them out. We are here to talk about week 3. I just said to Sam prior to starting this video, I think that this is a really hard slate. I think that balanced lineup building is going to be in need because I just don't see like much value that you feel good about. I think it's a really tough slate overall. So Sam, I'm gonna kick it over to you. What's your thoughts on the slate as a whole, and like what are you looking at quarterback here? We'll start off at QB.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, we can hear you.
Just as you know, because my stuff always breaks.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree with you. It's hard to say. I think honestly, it's mostly so difficult because I was saying to you before, there's just so many good like last week we had basically but like very few good quarterbacks. They all were on the island games, and this week they're all priced up, probably where they should be, and all the receivers that we want are expensive as well. So it's hard to say like how really ownership will break out. Honestly, was my first thought, because I feel like a lot of it will gravitate towards the same studs, but I think differentiating will be good in tournaments, because I think that there's so many options, like all the good teams for the most part on the slate. I think it makes for an interesting GBP week, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I feel like a few years ago when you opened up the slate, it was kind of like you were just plugging in the most expensive running backs and then you would figure out the rest, and it's kind of shifted, more towards the end of last season and then early on this season. You really, like, for cash, last week I didn't really consider Taylor or McCaffrey. This week, kind of the same. Like, you're kind of looking at the cheaper running backs. It's just pretty interesting how overall the game within the game has changed just the last few seasons. But I do think the receivers are where people, and I think people are catching on to this. Obviously Matt and I have been talking about 4 receiver builds like in cash later last year and then to start this year off. But I think people are catching up to that. And, McCaffrey and Taylor were not high owned last week, at least in cash games. So I do think the field's catching up. As far as QB goes this week, you had just said it prior to starting this. This is a loaded quarterback slate. So last week, we kind of were really on Derek Carr, and that was because he was cheaper in a good spot, and there wasn't a lot of good quarterback options, right? There's so many good primetime games. This week, that changes. You have Josh Allen on the slate. You have Jalen Hurts on the slate. You have Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Really, really strong quarterback slate. It's really tough, I think, to build like a cash game lineup right now. So I think for tournaments, like you said, it's a great tournament slate. Really excited to build some tournament lineups. But I think for me, cash games, Jalen Hurts is probably going to be the highest owned quarterback if I had to guess. And I think he is the best play just because he's a little bit cheaper than Josh Allen, and we know how much he's going to run. And it's a decent spot against Washington. So I think Jalen Hurts is probably going to be the highest owned guy. Outside of him, where are you looking? So I think for me, for like a main team, I'm considering Jalen Hurts, and honestly, I am considering Marcus Mariota, which I can't believe.
Yes, that's my dog. That's what I was about to talk. That's my cash game quarterback.
Yeah, I haven't figured out what to do with that yet, because there's just no value. There's no value at all.
Exactly.
So,
And I just think quarterback is one of those positions where obviously like there is such a separation between like Josh Allen and everyone else, and probably Jalen Hurts for fantasy. But once you're past those studs and you're I mean, Marcus Mariota is like almost 3,000 less than Josh Allen, and I'm not saying he's near the same talent, but he can and does run. And Seattle, like they suck, like they're so bad, and Atlanta is not a good team, I don't think, but as we've seen the first 2 games, they've kinda hung around and just kind of been in the game. I'm not saying Mariota is gonna drop 40 DraftKings points, but I think for him to, get in the 20 range is not unreasonable, and that's a decent multiplier, at least for cash. So, that's probably what I like for cheap, and then obviously, yeah, I mean, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, all good. I don't know, is Herbert gonna play, you think? I have no idea.
Yeah, the fact that he's been practicing and stuff, I think, does indicate that he will play.
Mm.
But there's probably no way to know, how truly banged up he is. Um,
Yeah, the only thing I was asking, are you gonna follow Tua after that game? I mean, Bills
yeah,
D is no joke,
we
but they almost
definitely
died.
we definitely have
Yeah,
to talk about that game. So
yeah.
I think for like a main team for like cash games, which obviously I've already done the cash game podcast. That's not what this is about. But for this podcast, we'd like to break down who we're looking at there, and then for tournaments. But I think Mariota is a tough decision because I do think he's a good play, and there's, like we said, just no value. So I do think he's in play. But last week, like I said, we played Derek Carr as a cheaper option, but there was no, other than Lamar, there was no one that really had that secure threat of 30 plus. Obviously, Kyler can do that, but we really weren't interested in him as it currently stands. This week, if you drop down to Mariota, you're risking not playing Hurts, who can get 30 plus, Josh Allen, who can get 30 plus, Lamar, who can get 30 plus. So it's a little bit of a different situation because of the guys that you can't play by playing him. But I do think he's the best cheaper quarterback, and I do think he's in play because of the lack of value at wide receiver in particular. So that's something we'll have to do. But he's in my player pool. I would say Hurts and Mariota are in my pool for cash games. For tournaments, what we do with this Buffalo Miami game, I think, is going to dictate a lot of things. I think it's a great game, but on a full slate, I don't know. Like if I build 4 teams, like I'm sure I'll probably have some of that game on one of those teams, right? But I don't know if I want to go overboard on it just because I do like some of the other spots on the slate. So what's your thoughts on that game? And then just Tua and Josh Allen. Like obviously Josh Allen is fine. No hate towards him, but Tua I think is kind of in a range where you don't need to like chase that game. Like if I'm gonna build a lineup for that game, I think I would rather just play Josh Allen. Correct?
Yeah, it's a tough one just because when you are in a situation where someone like Josh Allen is the price he is, if you look at, part of the how that like I derive like the projections that I run for Karma, and you're looking at a value, like you have to look at historical pricing at the position, things like that. And at that price, I'm not saying he can't or won't, he, can pop off at any time. It's asking a ton. I mean, you to have that be worth it to spend that amount of money on the quarterback. I mean, he's got to put up at that price. I mean, you assume at least in the high 20s to 30 points, something like that, to really be justifiable. And so I think in tournaments, I like Josh Allen, and maybe, he will come in lower than Jalen Hurts, but he's not really a priority as much as like the pieces like if Gabe Davis comes back or Diggs, who's still way underpriced. Like even if they're chalky, I would much prefer them and just hope that I'm getting more value at a quarterback rather than playing Allen. Tua, I probably will not play. I just picked him up in fantasy because I had Trey Lance, which is awesome. But I mean, the Buffalo D, even despite the injuries, is still like obviously really solid. So it's hard to say. I mean, not to mention repeating is hard in itself, but for Tua to have a massive ceiling game against the Bills D does seem less than likely. But that's just my thoughts on those two.
Yeah. He's 700 cheaper than he's 600 cheaper than Kirk Cousins, who is going to be somewhat popular, I would say. I tend to not worry.
I have him projected as the third highest owned, but I agree with
Yeah.
you. It's more spread out at QB.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's why we tend not to worry about ownership of quarterback because it is spread out. But I think Kirk will be third or fourth highest for sure. So Tua is going to be lower owned than Kirk Cousins. I think I like that Minnesota Detroit game a little bit more. Um,
I do.
so I
Yeah.
would I would probably lean more towards playing like Kirk Cousins than I would Tua, but we'll see. I don't know. I have to think about it. But
The only other
overall,
guy I'd mention is just, I mean, the other one I think we haven't mentioned because he's right in between. I mean, is Mahomes just like
yeah, I was
not
gonna
going to
talk
be
about that.
owned?
I don't know. I think he's a great play.
Yeah.
I think for me like cash pool right now, Hurts and Mariota tournaments in terms of putting them on the teams I build. Mahomes is up there for me, towards the top of my list for tournaments, and then I'm gonna go back to Joe Burrow. I
Yep.
mean, the Jets don't have the pass rush that even the Cowboys have. Like there is no Micah Parsons coming off the edge,
Yeah, I
for
was
the
gonna
Jets.
say
You
the
know.
Bengals have looked not great. I get it. Like, but let's be honest. The first game, that was a bizarre game. I'm pretty sure I can safely kind of blame it on that long snapping issue they had. I mean,
Yeah,
missed
and
extra
T.J.
points or
Watt
whatever
was
the
still
hell.
healthy for the majority of that
Yeah.
game.
And then Dallas, we know they are not great now with Dak out. Like their defense is like quite good. I think people don't really realize that. I mean, like those are two of, in my opinion, I could be wrong as I normally am, but those are probably two of the tougher defenses. And like their O line, the concerns are real. But that pass rush, I don't think he's gonna be facing that for quite a while, especially not with the Jets. So I agree
Yeah,
with you.
yeah. So for tournaments, Mahomes and Burrow are kind of my spots, and then like I said, I really like that Minnesota Detroit game. So before we move on, what's like your quarterback pool looking like? Because you just said you like Mariota a lot, but like for tournaments, like who are you gonna like
Yeah,
focus on?
tournaments, I would say mine will probably be Mahomes, Hurts, probably one of Cousins or Burrow. I can't decide. I like them both. Um, Probably comes down to ownership and who my the other pieces are because with Cousins it's obvious. I would love to do like a Cousins, Jefferson, Dalvin or something like it's expensive, but anyway, it'd be one of those two: Hurts, Mahomes, and then Mariota. I just don't really see. I mean, if since I found out that Jameis has like 9 stress fractures in his back, I'm not as interested. I normally am because he's super cheap, but I don't know if I can go there with he's just chucking the ball. I don't know how he's playing.
Yeah. I don't know how he's playing either, to be honest, but uh, I'm just not super interested in that game. I don't think. I do want to say
No.
before we move to running back, leave a like on the video. One, because Anthony's not here. Anthony,
Mhm.
this was the toughest scene. I mean, the YouTube people always hate on Anthony,
Oh,
right? I
dude, the
mean, I mean,
body
this
bag
is
was
this.
oh,
They always hate on him, but this was the toughest scene I've ever seen in the YouTube comments. I mean, pull the coffins out. I mean, he got absolutely buried by the people of YouTube after this week's cash process video. So
oh yeah, it was humiliating.
yeah,
Yeah, I
so
loved
leave
it. Keep it
leave
up, guys.
leave a like for Anthony not being on the video. Like the video, follow, subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on. We post these videos every week. Cash process is out by Tuesdays. This is out by Thursdays. We have the Sunday morning stream. We have some other ancillary videos that come out. I do some shorts a lot of the time, going over some of my top plays and stuff. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's head to running back. Again, I think the expensive guys, I said it last week, I think it'll be spend up to be contrarian this week. I don't think we're going to see big ownership on any of JT, especially after that game last week. CMC, he got added to the injury report today, but they said he's expected to play, so I'm not worried about that. I think we're more looking in the mid tier here again at running back. So, Sam, I'll let you lead off here. What running backs are you looking at for your main team and like any pivots you like?
Okay, so everyone knows, I mean, if Christian McCaffrey's on the slate, I play him. Don't care unless that injury is actually serious. He is going. I'm just saying, people are probably like that genius Ben, who's that genius we were just talking about before on Twitter, who's who's done with McCaffrey after 2 games. We know like the ceiling and what he can do. I don't really care how he's like Baker will eventually hopefully figure out that you have to throw the ball to him. So McCaffrey, I probably won't play in cash just because I want to play these some other receivers, but he is always on at least one or two of my 3 max teams or my main lineup. Um, in cash, I may just go pretty chalk and go with, all 3 or 2 of, Dalvin, Mixon, and Fournette. Fournette, I think you probably like, and I want your opinion. I mean, Green Bay defense, like, isn't bad, but I think people kind of, like, don't real their run defense is, like, not that great. So, or at least not as good as their pass defense, like Jair and everything. So I like Fournette, and he's probably too cheap. And the fact that like every wide receiver is like dead or suspended or hurt, it's hard to see Fournette not having a big role. So those would probably be two of those three of Dalvin, Mixon, and Fournette. And then I don't want to take all the guys, but then if I was going cheaper down, um, if I really needed it in cash, I would consider one of maybe Sanders or Jacobs, but I hate playing Josh Jacobs because he just doesn't do anything. So I don't know. Even though it's easy to say all the expensive guys, that's probably where I'll stay at least for cash. And then after you go, I can give some pivots I have tournament plays specific.
Yeah, McCaffrey's still second on the slate in opportunity share, so I mean,
Yeah, I don't.
you
It's
really
like
don't want to
doesn't.
worry about him
People are like
overall.
complaining, but it's like if you look at this, especially if you look at the snap shares, I'm pretty sure he's averaging 93% of the snaps.
Yeah,
Always on the
and
field. Like,
he's gotten 100% of any red zone touches and all
yeah,
that stuff.
it's
So
not even.
not time to
It's,
panic yet.
no.
For me, for cash, I think early cash game pool at running back for me is Leonard Fournette for sure, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs. I could throw Mixon in there as well. I like the 5 to 6K tier at running back this week. So Fournette, I think, is going to be a play in cash and maybe not be as heavy in tournaments because he's going to be, maybe the highest owned running back on the slate. I think it's a good spot. Just getting so much work, right? I mean, in just weighted opportunity, he's top 4 or 5 on the slate. They just clearly don't trust Rachaad White to get a big role as of right now. I'm sure that could change throughout the season, but right now they're just giving him the ball. And to your point, yeah, Mike Evans suspended. Julio, I would guess not going to play. Godwin, I would guess not going to play.
Dude, even
They're
Perryman and Gage are hurt.
Yeah, and
Like,
the reason that they're running the ball so much, not even is the fact that their receivers are hurt or out. It's the fact that their offensive line has been so bad. Like they just don't want to drop Brady back to throw and have him get killed. So they're just running the ball more than we've seen them run the ball during Brady's time in Tampa. So I do think he's a great cash play. I do think he's going to be very high owned. Maybe
yeah.
not. I just don't like the game. I mean, the total's below 40. I don't think it's a good game. So I don't want to really go overweight there in tournaments if he's going to be high owned. But I think for cash, you're probably playing Fournette. Montgomery is another guy that I think is going to be really high owned. Haven't decided on him for tournaments, but I do think it's a good play. Home favorite against Houston. When we've seen the Bears win, obviously different offense last year, but when we've seen them win, they just feed David Montgomery. I'm a little bit concerned about, like the red zone stuff. Like he hasn't been getting as much red zone stuff as you would think. Like they've been mixing Herbert in the red zone, but I'm not worried about it. I think David Montgomery's a good play. I like Josh Jacobs. I do. We were talking about opportunity share and how McCaffrey is still second on the slate. Josh Jacobs is top 5 on the slate in opportunity share. Like they have been giving him the ball a lot, and that's the range that I want to target at running back. So I do think Josh Jacobs is a good play. You have some other guys in that range. Miles Sanders. I think Matt said in Discord today, he came in there and he said he thought Miles Sanders could get up to double-digit ownership projection before we head into the weekend. I agree that could happen. When people start building lineups, like it is not easy to make a lineup right now. There's just not a ton of value. Like if you want to play Mixon, for example, you want to play Mixon and you want to play one of these good receivers, it's not easy to make a lineup. So I could see Miles Sanders getting bumped up there because of his price tag. So I would include him in my overall pool. So that's probably my 5 or so favorite guys. What are the pivots you like? I have a couple, but I don't know. This is a really tough slate. I'm not like it's just tough overall. But that's the guys I feel
So
best about, I think.
yeah, I'm glad you were mentioning when I really like looking at because I won a couple years ago from a guy I used for PFF, and the weighted opportunities is so important, and that's why I love my favorite pivot might be Austin Eckler. Herbert is maybe going to play, which is amazing. I thought he shattered every rib last game, but if he's healthy, whatever it is, I mean, Eckler's just, I know he doesn't have as many rush attempts normally, but he just gets so many targets and so many opportunity in the red zone too. I love Eckler, and I feel like he's always, kind of like I always say about Aaron Jones, how Aaron Jones is always priced for his ceiling, not for his median. I kind of think Eckler's the same way, so I think Eckler will be under 10%, and I love that. But I think I was gonna say, I mean, okay, Dave Montgomery, here's the problem. Number one, I have a bias because I've just been burned by that so many times. But mainly just the ownership is so high. And like I was talking to a friend of mine who works for 4 the other day, and I was like, if I had never seen the Bears play, I'd be much more in on that game. But unfortunately I have.
Dude,
And at his
they're so
ownership, dude, I
bad,
mean that
man. It's
they're
actually
so
crazy how
bad.
bad they are. It's crazy.
I mean, they just I mean, and yeah, and they don't do Fields any favors. So I mean, I don't know. It's cash, I get it, but
I
in
think
tournaments, there's like zero
Dak has
chance.
played like 2 quarters, and I think he has like, I don't have the exact number pulled up, but he's within like 5 pass attempts of Justin Fields, and Dak has
That
played
would
two
not shock me.
quarters compared to Fields 8 quarters.
Didn't Fields last game when they were getting destroyed by the Packers? I think he threw the ball like less than 14 or 15 times or something.
Yeah,
What are we
they're
doing?
literally just
What?
running the ball. It's insane.
Um, Jacobs, I don't know. I just wish he was more involved in the pass game. The good thing is that Tennessee defense sucks and he's cheap, but I don't know. Jacobs, it's just like I have to ask myself, and that I just feel like his ceiling is so low comparatively, but he is only 5,400. So I think that one makes sense. Do you have
Yeah.
any interest in? I think he could get a little buzz and could get chalky. I did kind of like Damian Pierce against Chicago because their defense sucks. The only thing is, I think he's pretty game script dependent, and that's an ugly game. Like if I knew the Bears were gonna be leading, I might like him more. Um, but it's hard to say, and it's chalk. I don't know. I mean, Damian Pierce, I think is interesting, and he can get a lot of work, but he also like there's Rex Burkhead's there and all this other stuff. The guy I like, if we believe Vegas, I was telling you yesterday, is Naheem Hines at 5,000. Dude, he's averaging 5.5 targets a game. Yeah, it's only been 2 games, but they're going to be trailing. Like we know that he comes in, and Jonathan Taylor is a beast, but I think Jonathan Taylor's snap share this year is what, like 75 to 80 or something. So there's opportunity for Naheem Hines to get more involved. I'm not sure what you think of that play, but I think that's a sweet pivot.
Yeah, I think for tournaments you could consider him for sure. So how, like I said, Cash, Fournette, Montgomery, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, those are guys I'm considering there. For tournaments, I want the guys that are going to be in that range, but just lower owned, because I do think the ownership's going to concentrate on Fournette, on David Montgomery. So just pivoting in that same pricing tier, I think makes sense. But I do want to note that like spending up on guys is fine in tournaments. Like Dalvin Cook, especially if you don't have Justin Jefferson on a team, like playing Dalvin Cook makes a ton of sense in that game. I'm not worried about Dalvin Cook after a couple games. I still think he's going to be fine. And then Joe Mixon, I think is fine tournament play as well if you don't play him in cash. But the guys that I like in that 5 to 6K tier range for pivots, like Antonio Gibson as a pivot off of Fournette, I think makes a lot of sense. If you look at weighted opportunity, they're right beside each other on the slate. So Antonio Gibson's getting more work than we've really ever seen him, especially in the passing game. And he's playing the Eagles, who we like to target the middle of the field. They every year give up a ton of catches to running backs because the way that they scheme their defense. So I think Antonio Gibson, especially if you're playing Jalen Hurts on the other side, makes a lot of sense for tournaments. And Michael Carter is the other guy. I don't really want to play any Jets on this slate, but he's up there in weighted opportunity too. I mean, he's above guys like
I know.
David
Why is he
Montgomery and
cheaper?
Miles
Why is he
Sanders.
cheaper than Brees Hall? I don't understand
Yeah,
that. I
he's
get they're
he's
like splitting
above
it, but like
he's
I
above
think he's
Sanders and Montgomery in
yeah.
weighted opportunity, and he's 5,200.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I think that's a fine play for tournaments. Like, I don't want to play
I
any
like him
Jets in
too.
cash, but I think for tournaments that would be a fine play.
Yeah. The only thing I will mention about for cash is if for some reason James Conner, it says that series is out, I would play Benjamin
Yeah, so we didn't
4,700.
talk about injury. There's not a ton of injuries on this slate, which is why it's so hard to build lineups. But outside of the Tampa receiver situation, James Conner, I think, is really the only big one that we're kind of waiting on as of right now. Things can pop up, like Michael Pittman popped up late last week. Like stuff like that can always happen.
That was
But yeah, I mean, Eno and Williams are still there. So I don't think it's like a situation where if we got news that Connor was going to be out, like you would be jamming in one of those Arizona guys for cash games. But I think for tournaments, like they would make your pool for sure if he's out. I just don't know. I don't know. It's tough for
and
me
then
to
dude,
trust Arizona right now.
Raheem's only 4,500. Led the
Yeah, is there
or the
any
team.
punts you like at running back? Raheem, I guess if I'm picking a sub 5K guy, I like Ramondre Stevenson the best, I think.
Wow, you took mine. That's who I would have picked too.
Let's go. I
No,
think he's a good tournament play for sure at
dude,
that price.
With Ty out, he like has all the
Yeah,
receiving work now.
he
He
didn't
had like
get
some, and now he has
I don't think
all.
he got a ton
Yeah.
of targets last week, but he did run a lot of routes. So I
Mm-hmm.
was encouraged by that. I think he's a good tournament play under 5K on DraftKings.
Yeah.
All right, we can move to receiver. This is a receiver is just a mess to talk about. I mean, it's absolutely loaded at the top. There's not a ton of value. So I think in terms of a main team or like cash games, I think Steph Diggs is definitely going to be owned because he would be more expensive had that Monday night game been on Sunday, and he did that.
Yep.
Like he would definitely
Yep.
be more expensive. So I think Steph Diggs is going to get a lot of attention. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to get a lot of attention. Amon-Ra was pretty high owned last week, and then he absolutely smashed. So people that played him last week will want to play him again, and everyone that lost because they didn't play him in cash last week will want to play him. So I think he'll
The thing
be
about
pretty
Amon-Ra
high
St.
owned.
Brown is that I'm pretty sure he's averaging 25 fantasy points a game over his last 9. That's the thing about Amon-Ra St.
Yeah, we
Brown.
can't ignore this anymore. I mean, the guy is just
That is
good. I don't
just
know.
not
I don't
good.
know. The guy is just good, and
Yeah.
he's going to be high owned. I think Brandon Cooks is going to be owned. He's 5,800.
God, he is always just
He's
quietly
he's
high
always
owned. I
yeah.
don't know
I
why.
I said this to Anthony on the cash process. I think
He just
he
is.
doesn't even fit. He used to be when Brandon Cooks was first in the league. It was like he was like the boom bust. Like he could get a long
Yeah.
touchdown or he could get no points. He's transformed in Houston into like the model of consistency. Like I haven't really
Yes.
seen like a big ceiling game, but he's
No.
gonna get you
But the
like
volume is
consistent.
always
Yeah,
there.
the
I mean,
volume's there, and he's gonna get consistent points. So I think he's
yeah.
gonna be decently owned. Jacoby Myers is projecting well, but I don't know. I don't think I
God,
could.
dude,
I don't think
that
I
is.
could do
I
that
was
in
on
cash,
that. That
right?
is such a trap. That's such a trap.
Yeah, I think I'm
I
out.
know because I've lived it.
I
Yeah,
think I'm
it's
out
not
on
what
that.
you want.
I think I'm out on that. And then Justin Jefferson. So, who are your favorite? I have one of my conviction plays this week is at receiver. So, and it's not really a cash play. So I'll talk about that after. But who are you targeting just overall at receiver this week?
One thing I'll say is this may sound ridiculous. I actually think Cooper Kupp is probably underpriced at 9,900. Just saying. I think he is. Even though I know it's like hard to jam all these guys in, if you're playing like Merritt or something, like if I do in cash, I will probably almost certainly play Cooper Kupp. It just the Arizona D is clearly god awful, and I mean, dude, he's just the every. It's I don't know how some people might track this. Like I think he's the first look every single time. I mean, has 29 targets in 2 games. I mean, what is that? So I will try to jam Cooper Kupp in whenever I can. And if not him, Jefferson. But the more reasonable cash guys, I love T. Higgins. He got hurt in that first game. He like has run more routes than Jamar Chase has. So just so everyone's aware of that. And he's way cheaper, and the volume's just always there. So I love T. Higgins. I also like. Okay, I don't know if we're just talking cash, but if we're not, and he passed everything like that, Hunter Renfro is like the ultimate leverage play. Everyone hates his guts after last week. I mean, he like fumbled twice. He like I guess cost him the game, but I'm pretty sure like that hit. Then I have to go on a tangent here. I can't be sure if this is right. I feel like Hunter Renfro when he fumbled in overtime last week, I'm pretty sure when he got hit, he got drilled and like got concussed. Like I think he was on the field when they returned, like laying on the ground. So, like, people
All
were,
I
like,
know is
freaking out. I was like, he
he
got
fumbled.
destroyed.
I think he
Like,
fumbled back to back plays, if I remember correctly, because I was
no, I think
definitely
he did, but I
watching
was
that.
like, the second one, I was like,
Yeah,
people are, like, ripping him, and I'm like, dude, he's, like, concussed heavily. Like, he's not well. Um, so I just think he's interesting because, like, Devontae is this alpha, but as we saw last week, apparently we don't throw him the ball all the time. If we're getting cheaper cash plays, I do really like Treylon Burks. I think he is sick, and he's been increasing his snap count, and he's been um, running a ton of routes. If he's on the field, he's running around on like 97% of the snaps he's been on the field. So I think he is at least an interesting at under 5K. And then I guess I'll throw it to you by asking if you're falling for the Chris Olave because we need to
Yeah.
clarify these air yards for a second.
So
I
okay,
get
yeah, that Chris Olave's air yards number from last week, that's a little noisy, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, okay. It's like
for
I want to be
sure.
clear that he's getting targeted, and like there are a lot of air yards, and he's running a lot of routes. I'm just
And I
saying,
think he's
people
good,
he is,
but
but when people see
this
that
is
like 330 number, I'm like,
yeah.
look at some of Jameis' throws. Like they're not even on the same plan,
Yeah.
so it's not
Yeah.
like
So,
I just want to clarify that.
I think other guys that are going to be owned, T Higgins will be owned, I think for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Drake London. So I played Drake London in cash on FanDuel last week. And that
Sick.
helped me get over the edge. But he's projecting like pretty high owned right now. I'm out on Drake London this week, so I am not a big wide receiver cornerback guy. But I think in this instance, it's something to consider, and it's only because Drake London is not a proven thing like Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson or something like that. I think he's very good, but he's a rookie, and he's 6'4", and the corner that he's going to be on, Tariq Woolen, as Matt I believe called him a cyborg in our text. He is an alien.
Huge,
Six
dude.
six foot
Yeah.
four, and with 4.26 40-yard dash speed. I mean, just an anomaly. This guy is at corner, so he's gonna be able to physically match up with Drake London in terms of like their height and their body type, and he's obviously really fast. So I do think this is one of the worst possible matchups for Drake London, and if he's gonna be owned, I'll just avoid it. Even though I like Mariota, but that's if he's owned. We'll see when we get to the weekend, but right now he's projecting to be pretty high owned, so I'm going to avoid that. And then Zay Jones, I think, could pop a little bit by the time we get to the weekend because there's just no value and he's 4,000. So that could be someone that I think picks up some ownership. The Buccaneers guys, maybe. I don't know. The game is just so bad. Like they're not projecting as well as you would think they would with all those guys out. So I don't think people will be super inclined to play them. But Russell Gage, could pick up some ownership or something, for sure. But I don't know. I just don't
I
love
mean,
a lot of those
the other
plays.
cheap guy. I mean, dude, I'll continue to play Greg Dortch. Like he gets so many targets. He's clearly like, and he plays that
Yeah,
slot role too.
I think Greg Dortch. I don't know why aren't more people talking about Greg Dortch? I mean,
I don't know. I
he
thought he's
was
like the
chalk
obvious
last
like,
week, did good.
yeah.
I think he's fine for sure, most definitely.
I mean, because he just plays so much in the slot, which again, I mean, they're all the Rams defense is pretty good, but I mean, for the most part, like he shouldn't really see Ramsey, who still is overrated. If anyone's wondering, but I don't know. I just think Dortch, he's just so cheap. I mean, he doesn't. I mean, dude, last week I think he dropped like 17 points at like 4,000 or something. I mean, pretty good. Um,
Yeah,
Talking tournaments, I will keep going back to Zay Jones. Air yards are there, routes are there, targets are there. Uh, I just think that he is like at 4,000. Zay Jones, like I think it's tough to like sometimes like if I throw him like into my lineup or something, I'm very aware that a zero is on board, but he does have the upside to catch 2 touchdowns, and he's running a lot of routes. And I think that after like the Chargers D is really good, but after these first couple weeks, I think Christian Kirk will be owned this week for sure. Uh, Evan Ingram apparently is not dead anymore, so he might get some ownership. So I just think Zay Jones is kind of interesting at only 4,000.
yeah, I think he's a good play. All right, my favorite just overall receivers this week, guys that I want in my lineups. Number one is Justin Jefferson. So I think when I opened the slate up, I was like, this is the best receiver play. Obviously, people don't need to say that, but he's not going to be super high owned because of the amount of plays near him. Like he's not
Mm-hmm.
just going to be a slam dunk play. And great stat from Matt in Discord today: 17 of his 19 career touchdowns have come indoors. It's going to be like if there is a game that shoots out, I think this would be my pick. Right? Is Vikings
And I could be
Lions?
wrong. I'm pretty sure. I think last year Jefferson shredded. I think when they played the Lions twice, I think he
Yeah.
combined in those 2 games like almost 400 yards receiving.
Yeah, I mean their secondary is not good,
No.
Detroit, and I think that yes, he didn't score last week, but I mean they're literally forcing him the ball. Justin Jefferson, like
Yeah.
they are forcing him the ball. So I think a big game is coming for him. I really like him. I like Amon-Ra. One of my bold calls, so I'll give it away early, is that 7,200 is the cheapest that Amon-Ra is for the rest of the season. I don't think that he will be 7,200 again. I still think it's too cheap. I know he's going to be owned, but I don't know how we can argue, just what he's doing. Like just the raw usage and just targets that he's getting. I don't care
Yep.
if he scores touchdowns, like whatever. The pure volume that he's getting is just insane. And even at decent ownership, I think he's a good play. Juju, I like a lot at 5,500 against a defense we like to target the middle of the field against. Obviously, that helps you get some KC exposure by using him. And he's coming off a pretty bad game himself in that Thursday night game against the Chargers. He didn't do much. And then one of my conviction plays this week is Tyler Lockett. I think it's a really good spot for Tyler Lockett. So he's not going to see AJ Terrell, and he's going to probably be on Casey Hayward, who was once a really good corner and is still not bad, I don't think, but he's kind of like a slower guy. Tyler Lockett, obviously he's older, but he is first in the NFL in average separation right now, so he's clearly still got juice. He's getting open, and he's actually third in football in percentage of his team's air yards as well. So he's getting open, he's getting separation, he's getting the targets downfield, and we already like the Falcons, like we like Mariota and some of his pass catchers. So I think Tyler Lockett is a really, really good tournament play this week and someone that I want to be overweight on.
I wasn't really on Lockett. I mean, Ben, since you're on him, I'll play him. I do. It's so hard because Gino just stinks so bad. But
Yeah,
I
it's definitely
completely
not a
get,
good
like,
situation,
if
but
we're gonna say that volume is king, which it is, then
yeah,
it
and
makes
the
complete sense.
Seahawks are throwing the ball a lot, like surprisingly. Um,
Yeah, I mean they should be. Yeah, I mean they stinks. I mean,
yeah, I mean they're throwing the
Ben,
ball a lot.
I'm very curious about this. I have him projected right now, and I've looked at a couple other sites as well. I mean, I have Garrett Wilson. I thought he was like the new flavor of the month, and he's like not being owned, I guess. Do you have any interest in him?
Yeah, I think in like a Bengal stack, you could run it back with him. I have no issues with that. I mean, this
I
guy
just I
was, I mean, he
just
was a
think
first round
everyone's
pick.
hype.
Obviously, he
Yeah,
has, like, it's not crazy that he had the game that he had last week.
yeah, that's what someone else said too.
And then we didn't mention Chase, but Jamar Chase is obviously up there as well. I mean, no, literally,
Yeah.
I mean, he's projecting for under 5% ownership right now, which is crazy.
One thing I will notice, you talked about. I remember last week. I mean, it was, I guess, partially lucky. I wasn't on Juju because I know that what's his name on the Chargers covers the slot is total shutdown, and Juju like got shut down. I mean, Christian Kirk could suffer the same fate. I will say, if that's another reason I'm probably not on him. He
We're
feels
just
expensive. He's getting
furthering the Zay Jones agenda here, aren't we?
well. I mean, yeah, that's obviously what I'm trying to do because I want Zay Jones to work out one time so I can victory lap it. But in general, I mean, also 6,200 for Kirk is like not that cheap. Like I would much rather play Higgins or Gabe Davis. God, we talk about Gabe Davis. He's a lock too.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Waddle, Tyreek, any of these guys in that game. I mean, I think it's obvious if you're playing that game, those are the guys. Like it's obvious, right? Diggs, the two Miami receivers, Josh Allen, Tua. Like it's not a hard stack to build. It's just finding the value at the other positions, and obviously it has a super high over under, so it could pop off. But
And
I
before we
think
move
that
on,
I'm gonna be
who would you
lower on
fade?
that game. I think
Who would you fade of Cup, Jefferson, Devontae?
that's really tough.
I
I would
agree.
say I would probably say Devontae, but I also will say it's really really hard to fit Cup into a lineup at his price with the lack of value. It's clear he's the number one receiver, but it's hard to fit Jefferson, and he's 93. So you're adding another 600 on. Like it's tough to fit him in, or like just build a lineup that you like around him.
Yeah.
All right. I think that covers receiver pretty well. We'll move on to tight end. Finish up here. Give some bold calls. At tight end, I think for cash games, for me, you're looking to save money. You have Irv Smith at 3,100. Juwan Johnson, we'll wait and see like about Jameis, but I mean he's 2,900 and still decent. But I think Irv Smith is going to be pretty chalky for cash games. For tournaments, I think Kyle Pitts is going to be chalky too, and I really like him in tournaments. I don't know if I can get to 48 in cash with the lack of value, but I think Kyle Pitts is a fantastic tournament play. Correlates with Mariota. And like I said, I don't want to play Drake London personally this week, so I'll just go with Pitts and then run it
And
back
for
with
what it's
Tyler
worth,
Lockett.
it's still Thursday. I mean, I have like a clear. I mean, on our up on at DFS Karma, I have Irv at like 17, which is obnoxious. Like, do not play that in tournaments. And then Hawkinson and Higbee. Okay, I will say, I thought last week Higbee was like horrendous chalk, and I I definitely say I was wrong. I don't know. Apparently, if it's not Cup, like Higbee's just getting fed the ball. I don't know if this is
Dude,
actually a direct
Higbee,
result of
yeah, he has
like
been getting
Everett being
fed, dude.
gone. He got 10 targets a game. I don't know if that's because Everett's gone or because Van's out or both, but like he kind of is getting peppered with targets. So
Yeah, if you look
I
at
don't
just
know.
overall target share, he's second among all tight ends. He's actually
Yeah,
higher than
it's
Travis
him.
Kelsey.
It's Andrews and him. Yeah, it's like it's kind of crazy. So I mean, the only point of that was at the similar range. I actually think, and I'm hoping, like I actually think Ertz is going to get ownership, which is always funny. But I think that may get like not squeezed, but Pitts, Goddard might not be like extremely chalk because I think, as you know, people just like to just pay down, and so um, I like that. I like that Pitts call too. I mean, everyone's kind of talking about it like in the Twitterverse, but like at some point, like what are we doing? Like throw Kyle Pitts the ball.
Yeah,
Like
if
get
there's a
like what
week,
are we
it's
doing?
this week. Coming off Arthur Smith saying like, oh, like the ball will find him or whatever, and then Drake London on like literally the worst possible matchup for Drake London because he's against someone that is his exact height and very fast. So if there is a week for Kyle Pitts, it is this week. Hopefully it happens. I'm really hoping it happens.
He deserves it. He's
He
so
he
good.
does he does deserve it. And it's like
Uh,
I don't know. I feel like I don't watch a ton of college football. I've watched more college football this year, but I like to keep in touch on it just because I like to know the guys coming in for the next year. But if people haven't watched college football in the last few years, like Kyle Pitts was so
yeah,
good. Like
he's not
I don't
even like
think
it
it's a
wasn't even like you
question.
weren't even playing the same game.
Yeah,
Like
like
he
I don't
wasn't
think
playing the
it's a
same game.
question of him not being good. I think it is the Falcons. Like I do think sometimes like we get too high on these players and it could be the fact that they're just really not that good, but I don't think that's the case with Kyle Pitts. I mean, I really think he is that good. It just hasn't clicked for whatever reason yet.
One thing I will say about the tight end is I was kind of noticing this last week, and I was kind of going back to some historical stuff from the last couple of years. In a week like this, I know, I mean, they can fail. The tight end position is what it is, but if you look at DK specifically, you have Travis Kelsey, who's $1,000 more than Andrews, and then who's nearly $1,000 more than Waller, and those are the only guys in the high fives to Kelsey 7,900. In tournaments, I would say, given people's natural reaction to pay down, those three tight ends, I guess Waller is kind of included in that, but mainly Andrews and Kelsey, if you can find a way to play one of those guys who basically is a receiver, you're going to get really good leverage because those guys, if I just had to throw out a number, I mean, there's probably like at least a 30 to 40% chance just one of those three is like the highest scoring tight end on the slate, maybe probably higher than that. So I just say, like in tournaments, not cash, but do what you can, in my opinion, to try to get one of those guys because the tight end position is just not one that people like to spend up on. Um,
Yeah,
like, like I'm not
I
saying
was
I'm
gonna
running to go
ask you
spell.
about Kelsey because I think
Yeah,
because of the
that's what I
lack
was
of
about to say.
value at 8K,
Hmm.
I mean he's only projected around 5-6% right now
Yeah,
ownership, and the KC receivers are so cheap. Juju's 55, MVS is under
exactly.
5,
It's not like
Cole's
you have
under
Ty. You
5.
don't have Ty. You don't have Ty Scott there
Yeah,
anymore, so
so
it's like you
I
don't have
think that
to.
the
Yeah,
just the automatic idea of people is like I'm gonna build a Chiefs stack this week is they're gonna put in those cheap receivers because of the lack of value and it's easy. So I think like this might be the lowest owned you get Kelsey in a Chief stack. Like if you look at the percentage of ownership in someone that plays
hmm
Mahomes and who they stack him with, pretty much Kelsey's always the highest owned guy that you stack Mahomes with. This might be the opposite this week. So I think he's an even better play if you can make him fit.
yeah. I mean, I'm always a Darren Waller truther, but he's going to be like literally negative owned. He had a fine game last week. Did he score last week?
I think he did. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he did. But yeah.
Um.
So what?
Yeah.
Just overall, who do you like the most at tight end? Or like who do you think will
My
be in
favorite.
your lineups the most?
Probably for me, it's normally quarterback dependent. Like I try not to play a random tight end. I like to stack them, but I would say mine is probably Pitts, um, Pitts, Dallas Goddard, and Mark Andrews.
All right. Yeah, I'll
Lamar
probably.
is Lamar is obsessed with Mark Andrews.
Yeah, he is. I have the Lamar Andrews stack in a couple dynasty leagues, so I'm happy about that. But I'll
Mark,
probably play Irv and Cash if I had to guess on Thursday.
mm-hmm.
We'll see, but that's likely where I'm probably headed. I'll be heavy on Pitts. I'll have Kelsey in my home stack,
Cash, I'll
and that's
probably play
about it, I
Juwan
think.
Johnson just because he's literally
Yeah,
receiver.
he's in play
He's
too.
literally receiver.
He's
Yeah.
in play too for sure. All right, that about does it for the positions. Let's give out some bold calls before we go. So I feel very bad because I technically hit on my bold call last week. I said Marcus Mariota would outscore Trey Lance. That happened, but that also happened because
Came at the expense of
it
me.
came at the
Thanks.
expense of Trey Lance. So I kind of feel bad, but I'm counting that as a win for my bold calls. So I gave one out
I would.
already, and that's Amon-Ra 7,200. That's the cheapest we'll see him for the rest of the season. Sam, I'll let you give yours, and then I'll give one more. So what's your bold call for week 3?
My bold call will be that I guess I don't know what bold is. I'm gonna say that Austin Eckler tops 30 fantasy points. Is that not bold enough? I can
No,
make it
no,
different one.
that's a good one. And I mean, what is he projected on right now? About 2%. I
I
mean, no
haven't,
one
I
is
haven't,
playing.
I haven't projected at 7, but I think that'll
Yeah,
go up.
that's high. I
I mean
think that's
down.
high, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I
I
think
think
he'll be
more
5
people
or
will be
less
on.
probably.
Well, because you know how, like, I always say this in there's like those sports where guys just are high owned, like in golf, like Xander Schauffele just always is high owned. Joe Mixon's the exact same way. People just like to play Mixon. I bet you he's
Yep,
20% owned.
I agree. Mixon will be much higher on the Eckler, so I think that is bold
Yeah.
enough. For my other one, I'm gonna go Tyler Lockett scores 2 touchdowns. I like the spot for Tyler Lockett,
Cool.
so that's my. I really like Tyler Lockett this week. If Tyler Lockett does not have a good game this week, my lineups will not be doing well outside of cash. But yeah, I have a lot of conviction around Lockett this week. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys have made it this far, like I said, like the video, especially because Anthony was on here. He doesn't have to get roasted in the comments. Someone had a really good comment last week, Sam. They said because your camera was dark, they said you looked like a locked video game character, like when they're blacked out on the
Oh, like
screen, and then you have to unlock
beat
you.
the
Yeah,
boss.
that
Yeah.
made me laugh. That was a good comment. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys on the Sunday morning stream. Good luck in week 3.